Hi, this is Ashish Panda, and welcome to another session of What I Know. Today, we are talking about storytelling and how it spans to so many different aspects of a person, and how storytelling is always at play in this world and for you, and that's why you should care. Um, let's try let's have this conversation with ourselves where let's just think to ourselves, or you think to yourself, when uh, as to what comes to your mind when I say these words: sales, job hunting, interview, promotion, management, hiring, examination. So um, clearly these words have nothing in common, or these things like examination and sales, what possibly could there be in common with all these words, right? That is the common thread between all of these are storytelling in some form or the other. At the end of the day, if we look in deep enough, all these activities engage in the basic work of storytelling. And storytelling is very, very critical to a person, to the kind of skills they have, and how they portray those skills, right? Like, let's talk about interview for that matter. You might have studied, and you must have seen this from your own experience. You must have seen this on TV or in videos, or heard stories about it, right? That uh, n- that this person is very, very skilled. He is a graduate of, say, Stanford or Yale Business School, or in India, IIT, IIM, but they are at a not great enough company, and they personally think they could have landed a better job, or a much more meaningful and significant job than that existing one. Now, there are other kind of people as well, who do not come from great universities or great programs, or are insanely talented, but they are working at great places, or running their own company, or just doing something very, very meaningful and satisfying to themselves. And we all look up to them to a certain extent, and we could see this mismatch, that this person is not coming from a heavyweight institution or backing, or has that backing, but they are at a place today which is clearly beyond what the convention says is their achievable, real. Then there is the other kind, which is, a great background, great education, great everything, but a very mediocre or a normal place at which they are today. Now, why is it that? Or I know there could be a lot of things at play, but what I know is that it is likely storytelling. Now, we were talking about interviews, right? Like, and interviews of any kind. Let's talk about job interviews. What is a job interview essentially? I mean, why does a company or a team of X number of people have someone like you come to them, or they invest in the time to sit with you and have a conversation? Why is it, and what essentially are they looking for, right? Yeah, the conventional answer is yes, they are looking to find if we are a culture fit, if you have the right skills for the job description, XYZ, right? But let's try to think how we engage, like how you and the interviewer engage in trying to understand if you meet the level of that job description, so as to get hired, right? Now, how do we entail in that, like how do we engage in that, right? We engage in that by verbally, like verbal question and answers, the interviewer asks a set of questions and you answer them. Uh, but then, and often the question starts with something like this, right? It starts with, tell me about yourself. Why most interviews start, why does most interviews start with this question? What is in this question that, it's so incredibly important? Your selection doesn't hinge on this question, but this question gives a peek as to what's important for the interviewer, and for that matter, all job interviews. Uh, and we'll make a connection to that as to, everything else and storytelling. Um, when the interviewer is trying to ask something, they are trying to learn something. And when you try to answer them something, essentially you are trying to tell them your story. In a way, you are also selling them your story. Yes, what you sell is verifiable. They can look at your resume, do referral checks, XYZ, but they hear it from you first, and they hear it subjectively from you. Everything else is objective, more or less. They look at your years of experience, the kind of work you have done, your resume, portfolio. All of these are very objective, right? Then the referral check later on that happens when they call up your manager or your coworker. That's subjective as well. But they hear this from someone else. The giant subjective back and forth of hearing about you happens in the interview with you sitting in front of them and telling them. That's a story. You tell a story about yourself, and the way you say it has a lasting impression, leaves a lasting impact in the interviewer's mind. And it doesn't only happen when they ask you who are you, or tell me about yourself. It happens throughout the journey. If the question, tell me something about yourself, pertains to, say, your life, or who you are as a person, even the technical questions are a way of learning how deeply you know about that technical aspect of the question, or how shallow way you know it. So the whole interview experience, or the whole interview engagement, is essentially an act of you telling them a story, and for that matter, you selling your own story as well. Now, I take interviews on a daily basis. I have been taking interviews since the last only since the last 2 months, 2 to 3 months, but I have been giving interviews all my life, right? I gave interview to land at the master's degree program, to land at my first job, internship, then all the other jobs. What has stuck with me is that, first, I feel great about telling my story, and I want to be in control of telling my story. And second, I have seen that it connects, or whoever's on the other side of me telling them my story, they are able to comprehend it. Now, what does that mean? We can boil this down to some very simple things. Just think back to the time when someone has told you a story, or the movie that you watched, or a video clip that you watched that had invoked an emotional response. Not a mental response, an emotional response. And emotional response comes in, again, like various kinds. It's a spectrum. At the very least, you'll feel empathetic, or I would say, at the very least, you feel that you understand the other person's story. The next level, or higher up, is empathizing with the other person or the story, and on the extreme end of it is you having an emotional expression. You cry, or you feel something very, very deep. That's what happens when you watch a great movie. It's a huge emotional response. Having said that, when I answer I tell the story about myself, I do realize that the other person understands. They understand why I moved from one place to the other. What's the story behind it? What was my motivation? What Ashish Panda, as a person, that's me, as a person, did, and the why of it. And the why is always the soul of the story. That's how we human beings get on the same page. You can tell me the how and what you have done, which is often what happens when we try to communicate. But it is when we explain the why and the other person understands your why is when you two connect, or when they understand you. And that's all there is to storytelling. Now, what's my answer? Let's do that, right? I I'll have you assume that, or I'll assume that you have just asked me in a job interview, Ashish, what's your story? My story starts when I was about to graduate from my undergraduate program. Till then, my life was a blur and I was almost on autopilot. What happened towards the end of my undergraduate degree is that I found a great deal of joy in coding. That joy led me to work on many small projects. That led me to take part in this hackathon in Bangalore back in 2010, 2011, which we won, and all the mentors or all the judges there who were bigwigs of the Indian tech scene, they urged me to take it forward or pursue that idea or the hackathon idea forward. So I left my I graduated from the university. I declined to join the giant TCS, a job at their company, and I moved to Bangalore for the first time in my life to pursue a startup. It ended in a terrible disaster. It was a complete failure. But what I learned throughout that journey led me to become a designer today. Throughout the 2 years time that I invested in that journey, I came across a designer based out of France who helped me or got me exposed to the world of fine arts and design. And the field of human computer interaction was taking off back then. So when the startup fell apart, I had a decision to make as to what do I do next in my life. And when I was trying to come to terms with that, I realized that I want to pursue design. I want to learn it professionally and dive deep into the world of design, specifically HCI. That took me to Indiana University. That changed my life. My time in USA for the first time were the first few very formative years of my life. I changed fundamentally how I think. I learned so much about human psychology, fine arts, graphic design. The program was very fulfilling. It was very enticing to learn all these different nuances of how people function basically, and how through design or through design in tech we can influence people, and that we have a moral responsibility to do it very ethically. Graduating from the program, I joined the company Verizon Labs. Had a great time working on all these different and innovative projects. Our goal there was to take products from 0 to 1, or take ideas from 0 to 1. After proving that Verizon, as the tech giant, takes it forward to different teams to scale that from 1 to a million. Having said that, the time there was very, very influential in my life, but yet I was left wanting to work towards a company that has a product that ships. That move brought me to healthline.com. Again, I was in charge of trying to deliver the mobile apps for Healthline, and we did so very successfully. Life was great. Things were going great. I used to start my day with feedbacks like, this app has changed my life for good. Having said that, after a certain point, I did feel like I was setting in for a very, very comfortable life going forward. I was 26 back then. And the fact that any other designer could replace me and do the same job or better, and the fact that it was a salaried job with the same goal day in and day out, it just seemed like a life or a career with a very smaller scope forward. And because I was an international non-immigrant alien in US, I was bound by my employer, or the scope of what I can do was always tied down to that. This, along with the feeling that I could contribute more to the tech industry or problems in general back in my country as against in US, led me to make a life-changing decision of coming back to India. Once back in India, I did realize how privileged of a life I had. That led me to start out to understand how people lived in India and how they went about their lives. What this meant was I set out on a backpacking trip across India, and it lasted for about 6 months. I definitely couldn't cover all of India, but I came across so much. And through this journey, I came across a problem in the Indian coffee industry where I learned that India is the fourth largest producer of coffee, but it doesn't have an identity in the global coffee industry. Even the coffee consumption behavior in India today is very, very different than the world compared outside. That that showed me a glimmer of an opportunity as to where things can go. I saw Indian coffee consumers' behavior change in the urban cities, and that led me to zero in on this issue, on this problem that I felt that I could solve for, and basically supercharge a consumer behavior change in the coffee industry going forward. And I dedicated 2 years of my life there. I built a physical product for the first time. Looking back at it, it was a pure execution of design thinking, and how through a lot of testing and observing people in their world, I realized what would work and what wouldn't work. So that led me to start developing this coffee product, and we were doing great. We were incubated at IIM Bangalore, and things were going great until there came a point where, even though we had paying business to business clients, we clearly had to scale up, and I was the solo founder of the company, and I couldn't come to terms with the decision of that. I couldn't make that decision. I wasn't feeling great doing the day-to-day of the business. I felt very joyful trying to build the product and solve the impossible and bring it to a level where the product delivered. But the business part, neither could I solve that problem, neither could I hire someone to solve that problem for me and join me. And soon I got burnt out. So I decided it was time for me to get done. And we developed two very amazing intellectual properties, technologies in terms of manufacturing and material, that I decided to sell to another competitor in the same field. And I decided that I'll get out and not continue a life and a career in the coffee industry, because that I knew that going forward I would always probably land as a director of product in a non-tech industry. Looking back, I realized problem solving and building products is what made me most satisfied and feel joyful about. So that led me to go back to the world of tech and do what I do best, which is build great products and design great products. And I do so today at Haptech. I lead the design team, and we are truly pushing the field of conversational AI forward. And I do so with my team of product designers and conversation designers. And I'm absolutely happy, and I feel fulfilled every day. That's my story. So you see how, although this is quite long, never have I ever felt that I'm stealing your time, or I felt guilty telling my story. Like, I know it's long, but I also feel that you deserve to hear it. And I have never had any interviewer stop me midway while I was telling my story. Um, of course, I've scaled down the scope of the story. It usually doesn't take 10 minutes to tell a story. I have told the same story extremely briefly in 2 minutes as well. But the key being that, you want to hear it. You want to hear it out. That's likely what a good story is. And my story may not be the best story that's out there, to be honest. It's great for me to hear, but you can go online and hear so many other stories. You can see a great advertisement. You probably have a favorite TV show, you probably have that one person with whom when you talk you feel very engrossed and you feel very motivated or you feel good. You have that CEO that you hear about, and when they speak you are totally engaged. Those are all acts of storytelling. When we try to sell something, and we are always selling all our life, we are either trying to influence someone or we are trying to get something, do something for us, in or we are actually selling a physical product or a service somewhere. Our day to day job, no matter who you are, involves selling, and selling is a great thing. That's an act we all engage in, just like breathing. um, and storytelling fuels selling. Storytelling is the medium through which we sell. It's the language we use to sell things. uh, that's why it's so important, and it's so important for us to get better at it. It's always going to be a pursuit, but I'm pretty sure there are a lot of resources online for us to dive in and learn how to tell great stories. And again, it's going to be an evolving experience. You might realize that, okay, today I'm not very great at it, but given enough time, and everything worthwhile takes time, in a matter of a couple of years, if you are constantly investing time in learning how to tell better stories, I'm pretty confident that you'll be at a place, or arrive at a place where, uh, or arrive at a time when you realize that you tell way better stories today than you did 5 years ago or 3 years ago. I definitely tell way, way better stories today than I did 3 years ago, for sure. Um, yeah, I'm excited to see how, in many more different ways, people tell stories, and how telling better stories I would go forward in life in general. And it's just really nice and fun to tell stories as well. It's like learning a language. It's like it's like coming across something that you never knew existed and was important, and you are seeing it for the first time. It's like that every time. uh, yeah, I hope you tell better stories, or you find this to be important, and you find your own ways to carve or craft your skills to tell better stories. I wish all your listeners, or whoever you talk to on a day-to-day basis, have a very fulfilling time listening to you or hearing from you. So yeah, all the best. That's what I know.